1064 degrees Celsius. That's the temperature gold needs to reach to become liquid. No ordinary fire comes anywhere close to that. And they were in the desert, without coal, without electricity, without industrial furnaces. Even so, recently freed slaves managed to melt, mold, and coat an object with millimetric precision that would instantly kill anyone who touched it the wrong way. This is the story of how the Ark of the Covenant was really built. The people had just left Egypt, 400 years kneading mud and straw to make bricks under the Pharaoh's whip. They knew how to build storage cities. They knew heavy, brutal, repetitive work, but what God asked Moses at the top of the mountain was something completely different. It wasn't rough stone construction. It was jewelry work on a giant scale, fabrics with interwoven gold threads, solid silver bases, wood furniture coated with exact measurements, every dimension needed to match the pattern shown on the mountain, zero margin for improvisation. And here, the first brutal logistical problem arises. Where would fugitive slaves get enough gold to coat an entire chest inside and out? The Bible answers this directly. Before leaving Egypt, the Israelites asked the Egyptians for articles of silver, gold, and clothing. And the Egyptians, terrified after the 10 plagues, gave everything. They plundered Egypt. It wasn't theft. It was back payment for 400 years of unpaid labor. So they had the raw material. It was in the backpacks, in the sacks, in the carts. Melted earrings, broken bracelets, fused necklaces. And most surprisingly, they brought much more than necessary. Moses had to order them to stop donating. But having the material is one thing. Knowing what to do with it is something completely different. When Moses came down from the mountain with the divine blueprint in his head, he looked at the camp and saw former slaves, shepherds, and people exhausted from walking through the desert. There was no hired construction company. There was no union of specialized craftsmen. There was no technical school. The challenge was to transform a crowd of fugitives into an elite team of artisans, and the deadline was immediate. The pressure was enormous, because that object wouldn't just be a work of art. It would be the house of God himself in their midst. If they did it wrong, the very holiness of the place could be fatal. Aaron had already seen what happened when the people made a golden calf on their own. God nearly exterminated everyone. The solution came in a way that had never happened before. God chose a man named Bezalel from the tribe of Judah and filled him with the Holy Spirit specifically to build. He was the first man in the Bible described as filled with the Spirit of God, not to prophesy, not to lead armies, but to work with his hands. Exodus chapter 31 says Bezalel was filled with wisdom, understanding, knowledge, and all manner of craftsmanship. God literally invaded his mind with supernatural ability to work with gold, silver, and bronze, to cut stones, to carve wood with precision. And he wasn't alone. God appointed Aholiab from the tribe of Dan as his right hand. The dynamic here is remarkable. Bezalel was from the tribe of Judah, the royal tribe, the most prominent, the one that would one day produce kings. Aholiab was from the tribe of Dan, one of the smallest and least prestigious. The Ark project united the top and bottom of Israel's social hierarchy at the same construction site. But men don't build a sanctuary alone. Exodus chapter 35 makes clear that God put in their hearts the ability to teach. They had to set up a technical school in the middle of the dunes. They had to take men with hands calloused from slave labor and teach them to have lightness in their fingers. The difference between striking a stone and sculpting a stone, between kneading mud and molding liquid gold without burning their fingers. And the first great task was to solve a problem that no engineering manual could teach. How do you melt metal at infernal temperatures when you don't even have decent firewood? The answer was hidden in trees that no one would value. The acacia, one of the few trees that survives in the Sinai desert, twisted, full of thorns, impossible to saw straight. But acacia wood, when turned into charcoal, burns much more slowly and reaches extremely high temperatures, ideal for metallurgy. We know historically that the Egyptians mastered advanced smelting techniques, and the Hebrews, after 400 years there, would have learned at least part of that knowledge, but this created merciless work. Hundreds of men operating leather bellows with their feet, pumping air incessantly into clay furnaces improvised in the sand, keeping the fire alive day and night. The desert heat was already unbearable, 40 degrees in the shade easily. Now add to that the heat from furnaces spewing flames of over 1,000 degrees just a few meters away. They probably needed to take turns constantly. Skin must have cracked from the combination of dry heat and constant fire, and water stored in leather pouches, without refrigeration, without ice, lukewarm and never enough. Burns were inevitable. Liquid metal splashes, furnaces crack, tools heat up until they turn red. Without the protection we have today, they probably used thick fabrics or wet cloths to hold the tools, though this offered little real protection. And it was in this infernal environment that they had to accomplish the impossible: forge the ark itself. The first rule of construction was simple. If you get the measurements wrong, you're dead. The box had to be exactly 1 meter and 15 centimeters long, 70 centimeters wide, and 70 centimeters tall. Exodus chapter 25 is specific. 1 finger more or less, and it was wrong. God had given exact numbers. There was no margin for error. Bezalel cut acacia boards measured to the millimeter using ropes marked with knots at precise intervals, an Egyptian technique he probably learned by watching master craftsmen work. But wood alone wasn't enough. And what came next required skill that went far beyond carpentry. God commanded that the ark be coated with pure gold, inside and out. And here comes the first deadly technical challenge. Pure gold is soft. You can't just glue thin sheets onto wood. Bezalel needed to hammer the gold until it became malleable, but not so thin that it would tear at the slightest touch. Then he fixed it using tiny gold nails or natural resin functioning as adhesive. Every centimeter had to be covered without flaws. If the wood was exposed at any point, the ark was useless. 3 complete layers: acacia wood in the center, gold coating the entire interior, gold coating the entire exterior. This made the ark incredibly heavy, about 150 kilograms. 2 people together couldn't lift it. Then came a gold rim around the top. It wasn't decoration. It was structural reinforcement to protect the edges when the ark was transported. But here's something modern researchers discovered. That structure, conductor, insulator, conductor, is identical to a giant electrical capacitor. Gold conducts electricity. Wood insulates. Another gold conducts again. If the ark accumulated static charge while being carried through the desert, it would function like a primitive battery storing voltage, and the cherubim that Bezalel still needed to sculpt would function as discharge points, exactly like Tesla coils concentrate electricity at a specific point. If someone with a different charge touched the ark, 50,000 volts straight to the body. Instant death, with no apparent explanation. But at that moment, Bezalel didn't know this. He only knew he needed to finish the lid, and what he sculpted on top of it would become the most dangerous place on earth: the mercy seat, the lid of the ark, pure gold beaten from a single piece, and on top of it 2 cherubim, angelic beings with wings extended covering the lid, faces turned toward each other looking down. Exodus chapter 25 verses 17 through 22 describes every detail. And here's the part that terrifies any craftsman. The cherubim couldn't be soldered in parts. They needed to be beaten from a single solid piece of pure gold. 1 full talent, 35 kilograms. 1 error with the hammer, 1 miscalculation of temperature, and everything would have to be melted down to start over. There was no margin for waste. They weren't simply molding metal. They were testing the limits of human endurance under extreme conditions, with the weight of knowing that this would be the exact place where God's presence would manifest between the cherubim. And then came the rings and poles. 4 rings of cast gold fixed at the 4 corners of the ark, and 2 acacia poles coated with gold, permanently fitted into the rings. The Bible is clear. The poles were never to be removed, ever, because the ark should never be touched directly. Those poles were the only permitted form of transport. 2 men on each side, carrying on their shoulders, walking in sync. If one stumbled and the ark swayed too much, someone might instinctively try to steady it. And that's exactly what happened to Uzzah centuries later. He reached out his hand to stabilize the ark when the oxen stumbled. He fell dead instantly. But the ark was ready and empty, and here comes the part that no one understands well. What was placed inside, and why did these specific objects make the ark so powerful? First thing, the tablets of the law, 2 stone tablets written by the very finger of God on Mount Sinai, the 10 commandments engraved in stone. They weren't copies, they were the originals. But there's a detail. These weren't the first tablets. When Moses came down from the mountain the first time carrying the original tablets, he saw the people dancing around a golden calf. In a fit of total fury, he threw the tablets to the ground. They shattered into pieces. God ordered new ones made. Moses cut 2 new tablets, climbed the mountain again, and God wrote everything over. Those second tablets were placed inside the ark. But the tablets weren't the only objects in there. There was also Aaron's rod. The people of Israel were questioning Aaron's leadership as high priest, so God ordered a test. 12 rods, 1 from each tribe, placed before the tabernacle overnight. The next morning, 11 rods were exactly as they had been left, dry, dead. But Aaron's rod had budded. It produced leaves, flowers, and ripe almonds in a single night, a dead rod that bloomed on its own. God commanded that this rod be kept inside the ark as physical proof that he had chosen Aaron. Third object, the manna, the bread that fell from heaven every morning during the 40 years in the desert. And here's the strange part. If you tried to keep manna for the next day, it rotted and filled with worms. But the manna inside the ark didn't rot. It remained preserved for centuries without refrigeration, without preservatives, only God keeping it fresh. So inside the ark you had 3 things. The tablets representing the word of God, the rod representing priestly authority, and the manna representing divine provision, law, leadership, and sustenance, all inside a box of wood and gold that killed anyone who touched it wrong. But those objects were only half the power, and anyone who tried to carry it incorrectly discovered this too late. The ark wasn't something you simply grabbed and carried. There were extremely detailed specific instructions, and breaking a single rule meant immediate death. The Levites from the family of Kohath were the only ones authorized to carry it, but not even they could wake up and just grab the poles. 7 days of preparation before each transport, ceremonial washings 3 times a day with water mixed with ashes of a red heifer, complete sexual abstinence throughout the week, partial fasts, purification offerings burned on the altar. Why all this? Because touching the ark in a state of impurity didn't just kill you. God's wrath could fall on the entire camp. It was collective responsibility. When the camp needed to move, the priests entered the Holy of Holies, removed the veil that separated the most holy place, and covered the ark with it. Then they placed a covering of sea animal skin on top, and a completely blue cloth over everything. Only then did they fit the poles into the rings. And here's the rule that killed people. Only the Levites could carry, and not even they could touch directly. The poles were the only permitted method. 2 men on each side, holding on their shoulders, walking in sync. Because if one stumbled and the ark swayed too much, someone might instinctively try to steady it. That's exactly what happened to Uzzah. David was transporting the ark back to Jerusalem, but he made a critical mistake from the start. They placed the ark on a new cart pulled by oxen. It seemed practical, it seemed safe, but God never authorized carrying the ark on a cart, only on the shoulders of Levites using the poles. The cart continued on the journey, everything apparently calm until the oxen stumbled. The cart swayed violently, the ark began to slide. Uzzah, who was walking beside it, saw what was about to happen, and he reached out his hand. He touched the ark. He fell dead instantly. God's anger burned against him. It wasn't an accident, it wasn't bad luck, it was violation of an explicit rule, and the consequence was instantaneous. But death by touch wasn't the only danger, and when the ark went to war, entire cities discovered what happened when God fought against you. When Israel went to war, the ark went along, but not like you imagine. The process of transporting it to battle had specific rules that transformed the ark into a devastating psychological weapon. Before any battle, the leaders consulted God before the ark using the Urim and Thummim, sacred stones kept in the high priest's breastplate. The answer came as yes or no, go or don't go. If God said no, and they took the ark anyway, guaranteed disaster. And the positioning was strategic. The ark didn't go on the front line where it could be captured. It stayed behind the army, but visible enough so that both Israelites and enemies knew it was there. The psychological effect was double. The Israelites fought with absolute confidence because God was literally present, and the enemies fought with paralyzing fear. Jericho had walls 6 meters thick, a military structure considered impenetrable at the time. But the ark was carried around the city once a day for 6 days, 7 priests blowing trumpets in front. On the 7th day, 7 complete circuits. When the trumpet sounded and the people shouted simultaneously, the walls collapsed. And here's the archaeological detail no one expected. When they excavated Jericho in the 1950s, they discovered that the walls fell outward, not inward, as happens in normal invasions, as if something from inside pushed everything outward. But the ark only functioned as a weapon when Israel was in obedience. On one occasion, Israel took the ark to battle against the Philistines, thinking they would have automatic victory, but they were in serious sin. Result: 30,000 soldiers dead, and the ark captured by the enemies. And what the Philistines discovered after capturing it was worse than any military defeat. Tumors, plagues, rats infesting the cities. Wherever they took the ark, destruction followed, until, desperate, they returned it to Israel along with gold offerings begging for mercy. But there was an even more dangerous ritual. Once a year, something happened that would make any human being tremble. The Day of Atonement. The only day someone could enter the Holy of Holies where the ark was kept, and only one person in the entire world had permission: the high priest. If any other person tried to enter, they died instantly. But not even the high priest could simply walk in. The preparation took 7 days. He separated from his family and lived inside the temple. Constant ritual washings, intense study of the instructions, preparatory offerings. On the day itself, he took a complete ceremonial bath, wore specific white linen garments without gold ornaments, and sacrificed a bull as an offering for his own sin first. Then he took a censer full of coals from the altar, filled his hands with ground aromatic incense, and entered. And here comes the part that few people understand. The incense wasn't decoration. The cloud of incense had to cover the mercy seat so that he wouldn't die. Exodus is clear about this. The smoke created a protective barrier between the priest and the direct manifestation of God's glory that dwelt between the cherubim. If he entered without enough incense, he saw the uncovered glory and died. If the incense was prepared wrong, with ingredients different from those commanded, he died. Every step had to be exact. After creating the protective cloud, he went out, took blood from the sacrificed bull, and returned. with his finger, he sprinkled blood 7 times on the mercy seat and 7 times in front of it. That blood symbolically covered Israel's sins for 1 more year. The complete ritual took about 15 minutes inside the Holy of Holies. 15 minutes in which the high priest was alone with the physical presence of God, without witnesses, without help, without communication with the outside. If something went wrong, he fell dead and stayed there until the next year, when another high priest entered. That's why some Jewish texts mention that they tied a rope around the high priest's ankle. But this is probably a legend developed later. What we know for certain is that no one could enter to help if he died. That was the most important ritual use of the Ark, an annual encounter between Israel's representative and God, mediated by blood, smoke, and perfect obedience. But after centuries of functioning exactly like this, something happened, and the Ark disappeared from history without a trace. 586 before Christ. Babylonians invade Jerusalem and burn Solomon's temple to the foundations. And when the soldiers enter the Holy of Holies, nothing. The Ark had disappeared. 3 theories dominate. Scholars to this day. First, it was destroyed by the Babylonians and the gold was melted down. But no Babylonian record mentions capturing gold in the form of an ark. And the Babylonians were meticulous in documenting war treasures. Nebuchadnezzar listed every gold object he took from the temple: cups, candlesticks, utensils, but no ark. Second theory, it was hidden by the priests before the invasion in secret tunnels beneath the Temple Mount, and this one has strong archaeological evidence. Modern excavations found dozens of sealed chambers that no one can access due to political and religious issues. Jews don't allow it because it's a holy site. Muslims don't allow it because they built mosques on top. In 1981, a rabbi named Yehuda Getz was excavating tunnels beneath the Western Wall when he found a blocked corridor that led directly beneath the Temple Mount. He believed the Ark was there, but Muslim authorities discovered it, filled the tunnel with concrete, and prohibited any future excavation. Third theory, it was taken to Ethiopia by the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and is kept to this day in the Church of St. Mary of Zion in the city of Axum. And this theory has strange details. There's a guardian who lives inside the church and never leaves. He's chosen young and spends the rest of his life protecting something that no one else can see. When he's about to die, he chooses a successor and transfers the secret. This pattern has continued for centuries. Reporters, archaeologists, and even authorities of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church itself say they've seen the Ark, but they can't describe it. Photographs are forbidden. Any attempt at scientific investigation is blocked. And in 1936, the fascination with the Ark went beyond religious territory. Heinrich Himmler, Hitler's right-hand man, sent Nazi brigades to the mountains of France, searching for the Ark at Montségur Castle. They believed the Knights Templar had hidden it there during the Crusades. Why did Nazis want the Ark? Because historical records describe the Ark being taken to battle and emitting power that brought down walls and killed entire armies. Himmler, obsessed with the occult, believed that finding it would guarantee the victory of the Third Reich. They spent months excavating tunnels in the mountains. They found nothing. Today, Israeli archaeologists believe it's hidden in secret chambers beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. But excavations are prohibited due to political tensions between Jews and Muslims. The greatest mystery isn't just what the Ark was, it's where it is now. And if someone finds it, what happens when they touch it for the first time? Bezalel never saw the Ark used in battle. He didn't witness the walls of Jericho falling. He didn't hear the Philistines screaming in terror when they captured it and plagues began to devastate their cities. He just built, measured, melted, coated, fitted, obeyed every instruction without fully understanding the purpose. And maybe that's the point. The Ark didn't work because of the gold or the acacia wood. It worked because it was built in absolute obedience, every centimeter according to the pattern shown on the mountain, every detail executed without improvisation. When you do something with excellence, even without understanding the full purpose, even without seeing the final result, you're doing exactly what Bezalel did in that desert, building in obedience something that only God can fill with power.